Welcome to today's edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM, The Word, and I'm Roberta Foster. Today I welcome David Richardson Jr. to Author's Corner, and he's written the book Transparent, How to See Through the Powerful Assumptions That Control You. It's published by Clovercroft Publishing, and he'll tell you how to find the book at the end of the program. Just a little bit about David. He served for 30 years on the staff of Cru, formerly known as Campus Crusade for Christ, devoting much of his ministry to university professors. And he is the innovator who discovered the power of assumptions. His research about assumptions enabled him to create the Assumptions Sorter and the Critical Assumptions Test, which we'll get him to tell us a little bit about those. And his research led to creating a series of video courses that is now called Learn to Discern. Welcome to Author's Corner, David.
Roberta, thanks so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So some of the statistics that were presented, we have 70% of people who consider themselves Christians do not believe in absolute truth, and that's scary. But pastors and parents of preteens, the number of Christian people responsible for guiding the faith of others, is also shifting in their view. This has got to make a pretty huge impact on society and the church world today.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, and particularly, those statistics come from the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University's George Barnes Research Center. And in their annual report in 2022, they documented that 67% of all Americans don't believe in absolute truth. So when you see that 70% of people who call themselves born-again Christians don't believe in absolute truth, and that parents of preteens, elementary school students, 76% of those, if they call themselves a Christian, don't believe in absolute truth. That's worse than the culture. And we already see how the culture is haywire.
Yeah. Well, I can remember back, 15 or more years ago, when the whole thing in schools was, if it feels good, do it. If it's right to you, it's okay. So it's not a surprise to me that absolute truth is not believed by very many people.
No, that's true, because that's the way that the culture is. But you would think that people who are Bible-believing, born-again Christians would be a little bit better in that department, but they really aren't. And you'd think that, well, the pastors just need to preach it more. But how do you do that when 61% of pastors don't believe it? It's remarkable. And I was puzzling over, well, how in the world did it get like that? Because we know, the world's going to do what the world does. But how is it that the church has gone that far? Because what that means, essentially, is the Bible's the Word of God if I believe it's the Word of God.
Yeah.
The gospel's true if I accept it as true. But if I don't, then, of course, it's not. But that's, of course, that's not true.
That's correct.
The Bible's the Word of God whether I believe it or not. The gospel's true whether I accept it or not. But how did the church get like that? Well, actually, being a professional apologist and having done this sort of thing for 40 years or more, I came to a very stunning conclusion a while back as I was following this research as well as the work in my book, Transparent. And I was trying to figure out, well, how did this get started in the first place? And what I discovered is that this relativistic way of thinking started about 300 years ago with one of those dead German philosophers. And he thought that, everybody experiences the world with their five senses. And so my senses are a little different than yours, and those are attenuated by our life experiences, our culture, our education, language, all those kinds of things. So everybody has their own unique perspective on the world. And presumably, because you're the one doing the perceiving, your perception is equally valid and true for you as mine is. I can't say my perception is truer than yours because I'm the one doing the viewing. Well, the interesting thing is the guy that invented that way of thinking gave it a name so you could identify it.
Oh.
And so that, you could identify this system of thinking that he developed. And he called it Weltanschauung, worldview.
Oh, yes, okay.
And that is worldview thinking in itself. While we oftentimes say, I have a biblical worldview, a Christian worldview. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's still a worldview.
Right.
And a worldview, regardless of whether it's biblical, Christian, Buddhist, secular, humanist, doesn't matter. A worldview is considered to be true for the viewer. So the framework of worldview itself says every view is true. Because I'm the one doing the viewing. So how can you say your view is truer than my view because I'm the one doing the viewing? Well, that being the case, then no worldview is true. If everyone is true, then none of them are true. They can't all be true.
Right.
And so that's where that hashtag my truth thing comes. I got to speak my truth because it's my truth. It's my view. And that way of thinking has been inculcated into our culture, and then it was brought into the church in the 1970s. And now we're surprised by 65% of young people walking away from the faith every year because they say it's true for mom and dad, but it's not true for me. And our pulpits and our pews are full of moral and truth relativists because we explain and advance the Christian faith using a framework that says no view is true. And if you don't know how to recognize something as true, well, then that's true for you, but not for me. And that's where this came from. But what I developed in my book completely demolishes that. I'm able to say this is true, this is not, this is why, not based off of a worldview, but based off of a person's basic assumptions about what's real.
Okay.
And those assumptions are mutually exclusive, meaning only one of them can be true.
Right.
And then I catalog them, and then I put them into a logic matrix of sorts that I call the critical assumptions test. And very quickly, using the critical assumptions test, as you're watching a TV show or a movie, watching a news broadcast, a lecture in a classroom, music videos, whatever it is that you're evaluating some kind of message, you can immediately tell whether the message is true or not based off of a complex argument or a sophisticated ideology. Nobody has the time for that. But if you can get at the simple assumptions underneath the argument, you can immediately tell whether it's true. You can do it literally with some practice because it's actually automated with a phone app. So you can take it with you and practice anytime you want.
Well, David, I'm going to interrupt you just a moment.
Sure,
We're going to get back to that and let you complete your thought. Let me just remind the listener, though, that I'm talking with David Richardson, Jr. regarding his book, Transparent, How to See Through the Powerful Assumptions That Control You. It's published by Clovercroft Publishing, and you're listening to Author's Corner, and I'm Roberta Foster. And you were on a roll, David, so let's see if we can get you back to it.
Sure. Yeah, no worries. So with the critical assumptions test, you can actually detect the underlying assumptions and immediately tell whether the message is true based on that in about 20 to 30 seconds. And it's something that I can teach to middle schoolers in a matter of a couple hours, and all they have to do is practice the skill. Because just like when you're riding a bicycle, at first you're pretty wobbly. And you try to keep the pedals going and all that. It takes a little bit. But after a while, you get the hang of it, and then it just becomes a reflex. And the critical assumptions test is the same way. Using the phone app, like training wheels for your brain, you just use it and practice with it, but after a while, you don't even need the app. Your brain will just do it. It's automatic. And it opens up a whole new world of discernment where a person can see what's true, what's not, and apply truths from God and the Bible to real-world issues and situations. One of the motivating verses that I operate from is Hebrews 5:14. Solid food is for the mature who, because of practice, have their senses trained to discern good and evil. The discernment is not an innate skill. It's not something that happens automatically just because somebody exposes somebody to truth. If you don't know how to recognize truth, you can walk right by it and never be affected by it. It's like me walking into your yard with a tiger, but you don't know what a tiger is.
Okay.
And you see that, wow, isn't that a beautiful furry animal? And that thing could eat you if you don't know what it is. And that's largely what we do in churches and ministries today, is week after week in our homes, in our schools, in our churches, expose students to truth from God and the Bible without any training on how to recognize that it is true. So if you don't know how to recognize anything is true, you recognize nothing is true. It's just true for you, but not for me. And that's what our book is all about is helping people learn this basic skill, and also our online training courses that can give people the basic skill. And we've also got semester-long courses for Christian schools, for homeschool co-ops, to help them become a truth ninja.
Yeah.
You really are really good at it, and you can pass the skill on to other people so that we can build a movement of people that not only know what is true, but how to apply it, how to use it in engineering, in economics, in business, in art, or whatever it is. And I cover all those subjects in my book, too.
And so one of the things that you have implemented is this critical assumptions test. And is that something that is included in the book?
Yes, it's actually page 36 of the book.
Oh.
And then chapter 12 and 13 talk about how to use it. So that's included in the book. And then, of course, the app is just, it automates the critical assumptions test, and that's available at our website, and you can download it to your iPhone or Android phone and take it with you. And that way you don't have to have the book with you. You can have the app with the critical assumptions test in it, and you can practice as much as you want, whenever you want.
Well, that's very smart of you to have created it in a technologically savvy way.
Not too bad for an old guy.
Yeah. Well, you have done a tremendous amount of research and have put this into practice. As we were talking off air, you actually told me that one of the reasons that got you started on this was to figure out a way to reach atheists and agnostics in the educational world. And so
yep.
In just a moment or two, tell us a little bit about why that was so important to you.
Well, because I had been working with university professors for a couple of decades, and I was doing my postgraduate degree at Oxford, studying atheist and agnostic professors and how to reach them for Christ. And one of the things that the atheist professors that I interviewed told me is that if I could demonstrate how truth from God in the Bible applies to real-world things, not just your personal life, where I'm a nice guy, but how God informs economics, how God informs engineering, how God informs literature or art or any of the subjects that are in the university. If God is an actual plausible explanation for real-world things, they're interested in a conversation about that. They may not agree. So helping Christian professors who work in those places to make those connections, I thought, well, sure, yeah, we could do that, and you guys could have quite the ministry. And then I discovered, these guys really don't know a whole lot. They may be 20 miles deep in an area of specialty that they're really good at, but when it comes to theology and philosophy, even most Christian professors aren't much more than a Sunday school educated person, just like their own students. And so I had to come up with a simple solution. And it took me a while, but that's what the critical assumptions test is.
Wonderful.
Is a simple tool that you can use in 20 to 30 seconds to make those connections. And it works. I have professors in major universities that use it and use it as a critical thinking tool as a part of their classroom lectures. And they're able to bring truth from God in the Bible in relevant ways into a state university classroom. It works in public schools, too. I know how to teach teachers how to do that in a way that won't get them in trouble, but can bring the truth in a relevant way into what they do professionally. And that's really cool.
Well, that would be very exciting to know that you're helping the future of America, the future of the church, to be developed on a solid foundation. Yes. Today I'm talking with David Richardson, Jr. about his book, Transparent: How to See Through the Powerful Assumptions That Control You. It's published by Clovercroft Publishing. And David, how can people find out more about your book?
Well, the book is available, of course, at all major booksellers, but you can get it specifically at thetransparentbook.com. The word "the" in the front of it, thetransparentbook.com. And also, learntodiscern.com is where all of our online courses are that apply the material that's in the book so that you can use it either yourself or you can use it with a church small group or any of a number of things like that. And also our courses for Christian schools, homeschools, and co-ops are all available there at that website, too, learntodiscern.com.
Wonderful. So one more time, the book today is Transparent: How to See Through the Powerful Assumptions That Control You. And I've been talking with David Richardson, Jr. and I am appreciative of receiving a copy of this book. David, thank you so much for being with us today.
Roberta, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. This was a lot of information, so I'm going to assume you'll want to listen to it again. Well, in that case, you can just check out your favorite podcast platform or go through kneo.org. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.
The world is in chaos, and you're here for a purpose. What does the Bible have to say about it all? I'm Mark Taylor, host of Crosspoint podcast and radio show, and I'd like to invite you to join me each week as I navigate the complexities of faith, culture, and personal growth. Each week, I interview a different guest who is making an impact on the culture for God's kingdom. Whether you're seeking spiritual guidance, true information, or a fresh perspective, this podcast equips you to discern truth in today's chaotic world. When Christianity intersects with everyday life, that's where you'll find Crosspoint, sometimes discussing the issues that some churches don't want to talk about. Look up Crosspoint with Mark Taylor wherever you get your podcast, produced by KNEO Radio and the Sky High Podcast Network.